Yeah, we just have something very special.
Yeah.
Remember yesterday when we spent, a little bit of time talking about books and about persuasion and stuff, and one of the most powerful books you could ever read on the planet? How many of you would like to personally meet Dr. Robert Cialdini? So, it so happens that he's here, and he's just going to spend a few minutes talking with all of us. This is the most cited living social psychologist on the planet. The guy is brilliant, and let's give it up for Dr. Robert Cialdini.
That's so funny that the whole thing happened. That is so funny.
This is awesome.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, how are you? And on top of that, we ran into each other in the gym like about 6 weeks ago. The guy's in killer shape. I mean, if he had his jacket off, he's like so freaking muscular. So how are you?
I'm well.
What are you doing here? You're at the same...
I have a session going across the hall. Actually, we have a.
Isn't that funny?
I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be dressed as I am today in this kind of temperature range.
I know it is. Yeah, but anyway, well, first off, we both have interviewed you before about influence. Right, yeah. How many of you have read the book Influence? Okay, great. And, what I'd like to more than anything is just kind of have everyone meet Robert in person and then go out and buy his stuff because really, you really need to read Influence. He has some new books like the book Yes. What are some of the things you've been up to in the world of persuasion, I guess?
Some new stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
chair for you.
I've been,
have a chair if you'd like, if you want to stand, whatever.
Sure. I think the important thing is something that you're doing very well. I was just standing in the background and got a good sense of that, and also doing some of the background. And I know that what's important for you is not just the ideas, but the execution, the implementation of the ideas. That's the critical thing. I'm not much for sports metaphors, but there's one that I think really applies, and that's when a coach says, it doesn't matter how good our game plan is unless we actually execute it.
Right.
So what we've been trying to do recently is go from the concept of principles of persuasion, principles of influence, to practices where those practices, of course, have to be based on an understanding of how the world works, how people work psychologically and emotionally. And then we can derive those practices from the principles. And let me give an example of something that I've been talking about recently that I think just illustrates this point. That it doesn't matter so much what you know, it's how you know to activate and then amplify what you know. Right? The principle of influence that I usually lead off with when I talk to groups, and it's the first one in the book Influence that some of you have, is the principle of reciprocation. It says people want to give back to you to the extent that you've first given to them. What's crucial is you can recognize how that puts the power in your hands. By being a first actor, by giving, you control what it is and how frequently it is that you're going to get something in return. Have you ever walked down a corridor, saw a colleague coming towards you, and smiled? What happens? You get a smile. But if you don't initiate that process, you don't get that in return at nearly the same levels. Right? So this applies to all kinds of things that you give first and that flows back to you. But here's an interesting question. What can you give first? What are the features of what you can give first that will cause the recipient to want to give back to you at the highest possible levels? How do we amplify that initial act so that we get the largest return on our investment from it? Turns out there's a literature in the behavioral sciences that tells us there are 3 things that if you load in to what you give first, ensure that people will not only stand ready to give back to you at optimal, maximal levels, they will be eager to do it because these 3 things were embedded in what you gave first. The first is that what you give first has to be meaningful to them. Right? It has to recognize who they are and what their challenges are and how this gift or favor or service that you've provided meets what they need and is meaningful in some kind of relevant way for them. The second is that it should be unexpected. It shouldn't be a part of the course of things, the way business is usually conducted. Right? Oh, I always get this. I always get a calendar from this company with that, or all companies give us these pens, right? That's just part of the exchange. That doesn't engage a sense of obligation to give back for what you've received. But the third is the one I would like to emphasize, and that is, it is personalized. It is tailored to that particular situation in which you're finding yourself. Customized. Giving them evidence that you care about them and you've taken the time to learn about them. Let me give you an example of how this works.
Let me ask about the mic. Is it
Switch to the handheld?
Okay, you okay with that?
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. I hope I won't have to repeat what I said for most of it.
Yeah, could you please do that?
Yeah. Just play that tape again. Yeah. So the last is personal. Let's take an example from a setting that we've all been in, restaurants. How many people here have ever been a server in a restaurant? Look around you. I mean, I get a very different response when I ask that question, let's say in Europe, where it's a class thing. Right? United States are entrepreneurial. People can start out as servers in restaurants and be in a group like this, making multiple digits on their income, right? Okay, here's the question. If you are a server in a restaurant and at the end of the meal, after all of the merits of your case have already been determined, the food has been ordered, it's been prepared, it's been consumed, it's been cleared, you come to the table at the end of the meal with the check. What can you do in that moment to significantly increase the likelihood of a larger tip? Any ideas what you could do? You can smile, that's certainly something. You can refill their drink. Excuse me? Call them by name. These are all actually true. If you look at the research, these things will increase. But there's one thing you can do that's entirely in keeping with the rule for reciprocation. Do we have a hand here? You can write thank you. And you can even personalize that thank you with a little, maybe your name or a smiley face. All of those things work. Give them a gift. What could you give them? Okay,
See, we have a good
I figured this would be a sharp group. It's a mint. Mm-hmm. If there's a mint on the tray, your tip goes up 3.3%.
Wow.
Now, you might say 3.3%, that's not a lot. If you could increase your raw profits at the end of the year by 3.3% for the price of a mint, I mean, wouldn't that be worth it? There's a study that was done in New York, tough tippers, 3.3% if there's one mint on the tray for each diner. Notice, you don't have to spend much. You don't have to increase the quality of the menu items. You don't have to hire a new chef. You don't have to pay money for enhancing the decor. A mint, by virtue of the rule that says people stand ready to give back to you after you've given to them, especially in that moment after you've given to them. Now, what I like about this study is that the researchers didn't stop there. They had another condition in which the server came to the table and put 2 mints on the tray for each diner. 2? Really? 2? That's unexpected. 2? For me? 2. And that condition produced a 14% increase. Not a 14% tip, a 14% increase over the usual tip without a mint. All in keeping with this rule that says, in the moment after you've given, people stand ready to give back to you. You'd be a fool, right, not to recognize the power of that moment. It also is in keeping with the rule for reciprocity by showing the more you give, the more people will want to give back. Now, remember I said I like this study? Actually, I love this study because there was yet a third condition. In this case, the server was trained to go to the table with 1 mint on the tray for each diner. Put it down, give his usual thanks, thank you very much for your patronage, please return, and turn to walk away. And then he stopped himself. And he came back to the table. He leaned down so everyone could hear. He looked over his shoulder for the manager. And he said, "You know what? For you, nice people, because you have been such good guests." And he reached into his apron and put the second mint down in front of each diner. And tips went through the roof. 23% increase. Now, those of you who've been servers know how important those tips are, because they pay a spit, right? 23% increase. Let's take a minute and decompose that third condition, which was so successful because it included all 3 of the conditions we've been talking about. That second mint, when it hit the table, was meaningful because it was a 100% increase over the first mint. So meaningful is not the same as expensive. It just has to be significant to the person who's received it. Secondly, it was unexpected. He turned away and then returned to the table. Right? But finally, it was personalized. It was for you, nice people. That's the one I would like you to prioritize. When you give anything, do the research that's necessary to identify that particular situation, that particular individual's challenges, needs, goals, and provide something that matches that personal need. That individual will stand ready to give back to you at the highest possible levels, and you've put it in the bank. They'll wait for the chance to do it. On into the future. I'll give you one last example of this. It's a personal example, and then maybe we'll take a question or two, but I do have to go across the hall in 6 minutes. But that's the scarcity principle.
That really is. How many of you feel more valued? Yeah. That is funny.
There's a hotel in the world that I recommend more than any other. It's the Mandarin Oriental in Hong Kong. I happened to be there speaking to a large group, about 500 people. It was a big enough group that they gave their keynote speakers, the organizers, were able to negotiate suites for their keynote speakers. And I got one of these suites. Ordinarily, I wouldn't be able to afford a suite at the Mandarin Oriental in Hong Kong. I got one free. And you know, at these 5-star hotels, you go in, and if you wanted to write a note or a letter to somebody, there's very attractive linen stationery in the drawer, sometimes with the hotel's name embossed in gold letters at the top. Well, I wanted to write a note to somebody back home, and I took out the envelope and stationery to find my name embossed in gold letters. Wow. At the top of each sheet of stationery. It was for me. See, this wasn't a device, a promotional advertising device of the hotel so they could publicize their name to whoever I sent it. No, this was for me. I have never stopped recommending this hotel to anyone who goes to Hong Kong. That's what this did to me, right? I study this stuff. I write books on this stuff, and it still works on me. So, it should work for you. Okay. We have a question or two. I'm just ask you to do that every time. You increase the ROI of what you give first, and you make it much less likely that people will take without giving in return if what you give has those three features in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone questions the power of reciprocity, and it really makes sense that you have to personalize it. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on how to apply that to a business where you're doing large volume of collecting prospects and you never see the person. I work mainly on the internet, so it's online, and people are kind of expect free stuff. So, you know, we're giving away programs, we're giving away free reports, but how do you take it to that next level and make it personalized in a robotic fashion, the way Joe talks about?
You have a current business that does something like this,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, and that's kind of, and we'll, you know, now that Robert's been here, we'll actually talk about some of that a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, if I don't want to steal any time away from you, anything you want.
Well, let me just say this. One other question I would ask: do you have particular customers who you're especially interested in?
Like
attracting
JV partners?
and retaining?
Generally, the people that do best with our programs are people that are jaded about other fitness
No, I
programs.
mean, the people you really want to attract, the people you really want to retain, existing customers, for example. Right? The highest.
Okay.
You
Sure.
don't have to do everything for everybody. Notice the Mandarin Oriental didn't put those in all the rooms. They couldn't do it. It's not possible in the sense that you said. No, it's a mass operation.
Okay.
But for the people in their suites, they were worth it. And believe me, there are websites that will allow you. How many of you have pens that you give out to your customers and clients? Right? With your name on it, right? It's the wrong name. I'm sorry. It's the wrong name.
That's a great point.
It's the wrong name. For your best people, you can get cheaply stenciled, embossed gifts and services for them. If I get a pen with the Hilton's name on it, it goes in my drawer with 50 other pens. If I get a pen with my name on it, it goes in my pocket, and I carry it around. That's all the time I have. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Thank you very much.
That's so powerful.
Anyway, your latest book, anything that you would recommend that they read to really understand is, I mean, you are probably the smartest person on the planet in the area of persuasion and influence. You've done all the research, you've documented it, you explain how to do it, and you've written about it, and people can obtain that. How do they get it?
Well, we recently wrote a book called Yes, 50 Scientifically Proven Ways to Be Persuasive. It's a companion to the first book, Influence. Yes takes me at my word that the importance is implementation. It's 50 individual findings from the behavioral sciences and the persuasion sciences that show how people work. And then at the end of that, we have a treatment of, now that you know this fact about how people work, how could you use it to move people in your direction more effectively and ethically? We always want to have the ethical component in there. So, yes, 50 scientifically proven ways to be persuasive.
Yeah, and what I'll do, Babette is going to actually provide me with a link that has like a lot of, because we had a conversation earlier, a lot of really useful stuff that Robert has put together. You can read his read articles, you can read blogs and stuff online, but also his stuff that I think will be most useful. We'll put it linked together with Babette, and I will send that out to everyone so that we have your recommendations that I think would be most useful for everyone here. You are like a 20 minutes just showing up and providing them to our audience here. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a good...
That's exciting.
Yeah. I love marketing.com. All right.
Can you just listen to him?
Yeah.
Just listen all day. It's